Hey there, Tarek Mariface here. Welcome to this tutorial. So today we're going to use SImbrief. It's going to be a tutorial on how to use SImbrief and some of its features, not all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. If you don't have a Navigraph account, you need one. It's free to sign up to Navigraph. You don't need to pay for any of their services. So create an account and log in. Great. So now you have a free SImbrief account. Now I say that you don't need to pay for Navigraph. I always recommend paying for Navigraph, but we'll get into that in a second. So now that I've got all this stuff, you can see that they've got a bunch of options. But for you, the simmer, the only thing you really care about is this dispatch. So if we go to the dispatch system, you see that you've got this menu. Now this is a global menu, which will be available on most pages. And this is just the start menu. So we can save flights and then we can load them here. We can edit the last flight we performed, view the last flight we performed, or if you haven't used it yet or want to create a new flight, you click on that. Also available here. And as you can see, you got that global menu. You're currently on new flight. So now we're going to go through dispatch options. So what does SImbrief do for you? Well, what it's going to do, it's a couple of things. First of all, it's going to generate a flight plan for you, which is excellent, right? As a simmer, you might not want to simulate the flight ops side of things where you plan a route, especially for the airliners. Airline pilots don't do that themselves. What happens is airline pilots will receive a briefing pack. We'll give them the route, the fuel, the number of passengers, etc., and then they just plug it in, changes as required, and off they go. So this is exactly what we're going to do now. So I'm going to go in here, and let's say I'm going to give myself the call sign, heck, we'll go with EasyJet. EasyJet 100, we'll go from EGPF to EGKK as an example. And as you can see, there was a loading page, and boom, automatically we get EGGW as an alternate. So we already have an alternate. We can set the date and departure time. So today is the 13th of January, and it's 12:50, so it's in half an hour. That's fine. You know, I'll make it a little bit later. I'll make it a departure at 1:10 Zulu. That'll do nicely. And then the aircraft type, well, I'll be flying, let's say a 320. Now, as you can see, you've got this right here. And so these are just default loadouts. So we're going to use those. So let's go ahead and go to A320. Apologies, I'm vibrating because people are messaging me. Oh, I feel so popular. So A320, A320-200, for example, we could get with the Neo. So the Neo would make sense if you're using MSFS. And you can set a registration. So if I open this aircraft new editor, you can create airplanes, delete them, edit them. So if I create a new airframe, for example, I can say I want an A320 Neo here, and then proceed. And then the wonderful thing about it is that you can modify it as required. So you can set an airline, you can set the aircraft name. So I could say for and registration, so I could say Golf Demo, and then the FIN number, the SELCAL code, etc. And that's really, really cool because then, and this is a 186 passenger variant. And then you can set, this is what's really cool, you can set the mass and balance figures. This is so useful because now if you manage to get the real values of an aircraft, you can set it for that aircraft, or you can set it to the airline specifications and to the aircraft in flight sim, and you can save. And so then if I were to reload this page, this would appear here. For now, I'm just going to use a default aircraft frame. Then we got the advanced options. Now you can set it however you want. So you got all this client profile stays the same. The registration, I'm going to make it GDemo since that's what we created, even though if I were to select it, all this would automatically be loaded in. So you got fuel factors, PM, etc. I'll put +01 just to be a little bit safer. The cruise profile, we'll leave it as auto, I believe. So you got cost index. You can set the long range cruise. So I'll just leave it as auto. And then on the right side, you've got the operational flight plan options, right? In the end, the operational flight plan is what you want out of this. I've selected the EasyJet layout. I think it's the best one in the options here. The airline I used to fly with had an excellent OFP, but unfortunately, it's not available right now. And then here you got all the stuff you want them to give you. If you're new to flight sim and it's really a bit too much, I would untick this, probably untick this, and untick this, and just leave these two on. And then every time you do another flight and you get more comfortable with flight sim, start adding these in. And the idea is to have all of them, even if you don't understand what they all are. And flight map detailed is good. I like to have 5% or 15 minutes, and reserve fuel of 30 minutes, which is per regulation. Kind of matches low cost operations. Okay, so at this point you got the optional entry. So how realistic do you want to make it? So I've given myself a captain name of Merryface. I've got my pilot ID, and then it automatically calculates the departure and arrival runways based on the current weather. And here you'd have dispatcher notes. So in real life, dispatchers might give you some notes. There will be some automated notes. So for example, the airline I used to fly with, the dispatcher would have some automated notes for certain routes. And you can see auto. So if there's a specific altitude you want to fly for whatever reason, and you could have a discretionary fuel. So let's say that as a dispatcher, you realize that the weather's pretty bad. Then you might, at dispatch, so not at briefing, you might want to add 500 kilograms of fuel for holding, as an example. And then you would set freight. Do you want any baggage? You could set it to auto. So I have a 0. Let's set it to auto. And 0 fuel weights here set to auto. Again, you could select a 0 fuel weight set for you automatically. So if you were to set these two as auto and then select an exact 0 fuel weight, what it would do is it would then generate a passenger and freight loadout to give you the targeted 0 fuel weight. If you don't know what 0 fuel weight, it's just the fuel of everything excluding usable fuel. Okay, so that would be passengers, crew, bags, equipment, all that stuff except for usable fuel. 0 fuel weight includes unusable fuel. And then, of course, if you want, you could set a dispatcher name. I like to leave it at random because you get some interesting names. And so, okay, this is where Navigraph is really cool. You can select an AIRAC if you have Navigraph. If you don't, it will default to an older AIRAC, and you won't be up to date. So I can set more settings here if I want down here. But so here you go, the ones you can download and stuff. Connecting a paid version of Navigraph is really useful. You could have the subscription, which I do, or you could pay for a one-off AIRAC and then sync it with SImbrief, and then you'd have the up-to-date. So if you really don't want to pay for a subscription, which I completely understand, I personally hate subscriptions for most things. Let's turn off Flux. Oh, that's not Flux. Okay. So if you don't want to pay for subscriptions, you can pay one-offs for Navigraph, and then you can sync that there. And then here, you've got the automatically generated route, and then it automatically analyzes it and makes sure that it works, and it gives you a route distance. And then you got a bunch of different suggested routes, and you can see more routes available. I tend to stick to the default one. And then all this you can leave, but here you've got a route finder, so you can play around with this to find the correct routing. If you want to go through specific ways, you can set weather. So I tend to just use the default SImbrief weather, which is the live weather. You can upload a snapshot. I've never used this feature. I tend to use live weather or just clear skies. Then alternate airports. So it has automatically selected an alternate airport. And in here, the great thing, it's also automatically detected which runway is going to be used. It's going to automatically select the routing altitude and the routing itself. And then if you want, you can analyze the route, make sure that it's valid. And so you can see that the route then appears down here. So it goes, okay, you fly from Glasgow, you reach EG, what was it again? EGGW. And then you realize, nope, actually, I need to go to Luton. Sorry, EGKK. it's doing the approach. EGKK, so to Gatwick, and then it's going to take you this route around to Luton. I got myself confused for a second, which is awesome. And if you want, you can set a takeoff alternate or en route alternate if you need to, and you can just say find, and then that'll give you those alternate as well, and they will appear here as a list. So if I say find, it'll give me EGCC. I'm forgetting. What's EGCC again? I think it's I don't remember. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But anyways, so then you can add them in. So I'll remove that as I don't need it. Okay. And then you got debug parameters, which you don't care. Let's go back to ETOP scenario. We're not doing ETOPS, but if it is an ETOP scenario, it's going to give you the ETOPS calculations and scenario details, etc. So that's really, really cool as well. So with all that done, we can go back to the top. We can save the flight, which is really cool. So your flight has been saved, so that's perfect. So now that flight is saved. So if I were to repeat this flight, I would load it, and then all these details would come in. These details would come in right here, and then the rest would be generated based on the current data. So let's generate a flight. I'm going to overwrite my current flight that was loaded. And now we have an operational flight plan. So you've got a summary here, and really, if you're starting off and this is all a little too much for you in terms of flight sim, just use this. This is enough. It gives you a routing. It gives you, so here you got DX planned optimum flight level. So that's the automatic dispatch message. You've got your call sign, you've got your routing, you've got the fuel you need. So the block fuel with the extra 500 and the zero fuel weight, and then the takeoff weight. Fantastic. So if you want to simulate ops a little more realistically, you go in here. And the great thing is you've got a guide which will help you out with this. So a user guide on how to read operational flight plans. The EasyJet for me is the best one because it's the one that has the best summary at the top. It's not perfect. There's still some things that could be better, but it does a good job. And then if I go down to, where was it? If I go down to here, you can download the flight plans themselves for your simulator, and you got quite a few. And if you're someone who does that on a regular basis, you can download their tools. As you can see, that pops up every time. I'm going to say don't show this again because I've seen it a million times. I never download flight plans. It's just not my thing. I like to put them in manually, but I'm pretty sure there'll be one point where I do want to have it there. Down here, you can pre-file for all the different networks. POSCON is one I'd never heard of. So I tend to use VATSIM. I tried IVAO a few times, and I still need to try out Pilot Edge. I really want to, but I haven't been able to justify the cost. POSCON's an interesting one. After this video, I'm going to go look it up because that's exciting, a new one. So if you go back to the top, you'll see print preview PDF, and this is where you can get the operational flight plan printed, and it looks much more user-friendly than down here. Where is it? Yeah, see, this is ugly. This is usable, and this is what I like to use. So you could put it on a tablet, you can put it on a separate monitor, or if you really want to waste paper, you can put it on a separate on print. Now you can see this is quite a long flight plan, and why? Because it's simulating realistic operational flight plans, and yes, they are that long. You can see here we've got loads of pages. We're talking about 35 pages. Usually what takes the bulk of a flight plan is going to be the NOTAMs. So we got the OFP here, we've got the summary, the remarks, the routes, which is really important, the total distance, and then the fuel planning. So this is really good, right? Because here I put an extra 500, so it's going to tanker 500, but I could say, well, actually, so you can transfer these across 230, 2430, 545, alternates of 996, final reserve 922 plus additional, And so here's the thing: you can add additional and say, actually, the planner gave me 500 for tankering or for weather, but actually I feel more comfortable if I had 1.5 tons. So you can add that ton here, and then you can do the totals. And then so although this is the plan block, you can then update it, and then basically at the end you have your final block fuel down at the bottom, and that's what you're going to take. And the great thing here is that you've got takeoff weight corrections to see how much more you'll burn for any sort of additional fuel or altitude changes. So if you plus 1,000, you're going to burn 24 extra. And if you take less than 1,000, you'll burn 27 less. And then if you fly 2,000 feet below, you'll burn an extra 19. But if you fly 4,000 feet below, you'll burn an extra 55 kilograms. And that's total for the entire trip. And the time you can see will be the same. So here you've got the pilot log, the operational flight plan. So you can see you've got the Norbo 1 hotel departure, which are these waypoints. And it's telling you that you're climbing. You're going to reach 300 feet cruise. 300 feet indicated airspeed. And you can see the temperatures. You can see the ground speed. You can see the winds at these points. Can be very useful for flying the Airbus or the 737. You can put the en route winds for more accurate sort of forecast on the FMGS. And then if you're really sort of wanting to simulate reality, once you reach sort of cruising levels or up in the climb, what you can do is you can fill out your fuel at these points. So at Rovla, you can set ROVLA, and so then when you do that, you compare the two values. And then you see if 3644 is more than what you currently have, then there's an issue. You're burning more fuel than you want, and that's a problem. But if it's more than 3644, then you're good. You've got more than the minimum fuel required, so you then can continue. And you can do this along most of the route. If you really want to simulate reality, that's what pilots do essentially. They'll put in those values as they go along. Okay, so once we're done with the fuel, you can see down here, you've got weather. So weather for Gatwick, the runway in use, and then you can put the ATIS information right here. And then you have some additional data here for the weather information. So the airline I used to fly for, you would have areas for the weather here. There you go, perfect. EGPF, ATIS, weather. You got it here. So then you put the weather here, you put the ATIS, you put the runway in use, and you put your ATC clearance and then the squawk code. This is really nice, actually. I quite like this, as opposed to just putting it all in a single box at the bottom of the flight plan, which is how we used to do it. So that's good. So here, this is really good because this is a summary of the winds and the temperatures. So this is what I would use to actually put those weather and temperature informations along the cruise, and basically, if once you're in the cruise, don't do this on the ground. On the ground, if you're on the A320, you can just put an average wind, which you can see here. It'll be somewhere around here. Again, this is not the flight plan I'm used to, but trip wind, headwind 6. So you just put headwind 6 on the init page, and then that'll give you an average wind. But then if you're really bored in the cruise, you can go ahead and put the winds at each of these individual eggs: Kepad, Telba, Vidtok, Omlux, Pepul, Disset. But only once you're in the cruise. You don't have to do it on the ground. That's silly. And then here you've got the filed flight plan. Okay, so this is what takes the bulk, the next part, and that's going to be the weather and the NOTAMs. So you've got all the air mets. So here, no significant weathers available here, but the air mets, not the SIGMETs. You've got SIGMETs available. So for the Scottish FIR EGPX, you're going to have these. So here I can see that it's valid from today 11:30 until today at 3:30, and it's reporting severe mountain waves forecast in these areas. So we would then go to the bottom, match the coordinates, and then you would see roughly the area. Then you just draw where the mountain waves are on the chart, just to give yourself a rough idea where that weather is, and so forth. So here we've got another one, and you got severe turbulence forecast north of the line, and then you plot these 2 points, you draw a line between them, and then that's between the surface and flight level 60. That one's between flight level 060 and 260, And you can see a STNR for stationary, and then NC for no change. So stationary, no change. And then here you've got for SIGMET for London, we're seeing severe mountain waves forecast in this area. So you draw a box based on these coordinates, just like you did with the Scottish. And you see that it's between flight level 060, 260, and it's stationary, no change. No tropical cyclones, thankfully, and thankfully no volcanic ash. And then here we've got the METARs and TAF. So you can see this is for observation, and this is for forecast. So for each airport, your destination alternates, and your departure airport. This is something I've always been really confused about. Why do they put the destination first, the alternate, and then the departure? They really should put it the other way around. Now, here, as you can see, they've only put 3. In real life, they would give you a bunch of airports, pages and pages of airports. I kind of think there's a middle ground. So if you'd put an en route alternate or takeoff alternate, then those would appear here. So add some en route alternates if you want, either automatically or manually, and then those will appear here as well. Okay. So now there you go, the NOTAMs. NOTAMs are a pilot's worst part of the pre-flight, right? Because there's just so much of it. Thankfully, these have been translated, but it just, a lot of it's to do with cranes. Crane, downgraded Cat 7 for the following times. That's fire coverage, and so forth. And so you do have to sort of scan these. So first you've got the NOTAMs for the airports, and then you've got for the extended area, so the FIRs, and so forth, and you got pages of this. And this actually is not too bad. It's only 34 pages. It could be worse. I've had OFPs of hundreds of pages. So all of these are NOTAMs. And so if you want to, you can go ahead and read through all of them. Let's face it, it's flight simulator. The NOTAMs aren't really going to affect you that much. If you want to simulate reality accurately, then yes, you need to go through these. So a lot of it's going to be completely irrelevant to you. It's just the reality of NOTAMs. It's just the unfortunate nature of NOTAMs. And then at the bottom, you're going to have company NOTAMs. Company NOTAMs are exactly that. They're notice to airmen. I think they've changed the airmen is something else now. I think it's something a bit more woke, politically correct. But the company NOTAMs are NOTAMs for just those crews. And so you can see subject auto cost index. When planning a cost index, 2 options are available. Pilot may either set a specific cost index number from the list, or they may select auto when planning an auto cost index. The system will reference to the scheduled time en route, blah, blah, blah. So these are just things that are relevant. Flight release units, all flight crew, please pay special attention to the unit selection, etc. Great. And so then we have looked at the METARs and the TAFs and the text weather. But the next thing we do need to look at is sort of the big picture weather. And so at this point, we would have drawn those significant weathers just to have an idea of what's going on. And so you've got this, which is showing the route in its entirety. And then what you can see here, you've got significant weather, flight level 100 to 450. It was generated in Washington. Fair enough, not the Met Office. And there's not really much to see. And the reason for that is this right here. This is a high pressure system. And as you can see, the tropopause is at 420. So nice and big. So you got a high pressure system, which usually comes with nice weather. So today is a lovely day across most of the UK. And so we don't have much in terms of weather. So you would see fronts and you would see turbulence and icing and those sort of things on this chart. So probably not the best day to demonstrate the significant weather chart. And so you've got, so going back here, you've got flight level 100 to 450 and then 250 to 630. And then here we've got the winds and temperature chart. And remember we're talking about if I go scroll back up, you see that H with the 420. It's the high pressure system. You can see the center of the high pressure system is here, where the wind is calmer. And like it should in the northern hemisphere, it's rotating clockwise. Yeah, so the rule is when it's a high pressure system and you're facing north, and you're between a high pressure and a low pressure, the wind's going to be on your back. right? So there's a low pressure to the left somewhere, and if I were standing here, then you've got the high pressure system going clockwise, and so I can tell just from the direction of the winds that this is a high pressure system. And so here you can see the winds. You can see that further out the winds get stronger. As you get closer, it gets smaller, weaker. So this is the flight level 300. You can see winds are really weak in the center, about 5 to 0 knots, and then 10 knots. So a short line is 5 knots, a long line is 10 knots, and then the triangle is 50 knots. So here you got 0 to 5 knots, and then at the extremities you've got about 80 knots, 75 knots going on there. So that's how you can read the wind and weather, and wind and temperature. Oh, actually temperature. We didn't talk about temperature. The numbers, those are temperatures. So it's negative 45 degrees at flight level 300, negative 46 degrees at flight level 300. And so you'll have, if I continue underneath here, you have flight level 340, temperature minus 56. And so what you should remember is that temperatures above the tropopause don't really drop. And so typically you would have 56.5 at around flight level 360. So it's a little bit colder than the standard, as you can see here. And because the tropopause is high, the temperatures are going to continue dropping until you reach the tropopause. So you see flight level 390, tropopause is higher than what we're used to. So you're going to see colder temperatures. So there's negative 65 degrees, negative 63 degrees. So that negative 56.5 degrees, which is the international standard, is not going to be there. And here you've got a lateral profile. So you can see you take off from Glasgow, the bottom left, you climb, you got the wind profiles as you climb. So you see that we've got winds from the southeast. So a little bit of a head crosswind. So don't get confused. Don't think that's pushing us that way. So the winds themselves is a top-down view, but then the red line is a profile view. And so you can see how the winds are at those points. So here the winds are coming from the south. So that's going to be a pretty strong headwind. And then we come back down. And there you go. And so we've read the OFP. Fantastic. This is how you use SImbrief. That's really all there is to it. I've given you a little bit of a brief overview of the OFP, probably more than I thought I would give you, but it's such an interesting document. And yeah, pilots will print this for every flight. So some pilots who try to conserve a little bit of like to help the environment a little, and I used to do that. Like if you're doing multiple legs, what you would do is you would print just the flight plan first, and then you'd put the weather and the NOTAMs in one pack, and then that would sort of help organize things, and you'd save some paper as well, because a lot of the NOTAMs would be printed out twice, and you could combine them. There's a special way to combine them and that kind of stuff, so you would print less paper overall while still having all the data you needed. The up-to-date data for both the inbound and outbound. But yeah, so these are the things you can do. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, ask in the comment below. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. But I'm Tarek Merriface. I'll see you guys next time, and happy gaming.